Hi guys, I'm Adrian Mick. Uh, I was going to start off. I was going to start off making videos and just sending them out there and have people respond. And oddly enough, to to be about music and how music shaped my life, and maybe ask you all how it shaped your life and how the first music you heard shaped your life, and um, how it's been sort of the soundtrack of your life. Not playing music really. I wanted to do this as simply as possible. When I was growing up, it was during a time when um, that's what we did with our time. We talked a lot about music. We're not really we people don't do that as much anymore. We talk about entertainment and things, but we don't talk about new songs that move us, new music that moves us. So, but during and I myself, being almost 60 years old, have a lot of holdover from like every decade does, every age does, usually has music that uh, is sort of a follow-up. The music that they are currently listening to, excuse me, is a follow-up of things that happened before. And I was going to be talking about that, but right now I think we're living in the time that we're living in. This is an urgent time, and we're told every day, every moment of every day, how urgent it is. And this time is going to be, this video is going to be a little different, mainly because most of you are hearing about things. Maybe your jobs are being affected, maybe travel arrangements have had to be postponed, and all these things are going on. I myself, just prior to this, almost a month ago, but 3.5 weeks ago, had a pretty big blow in my life financially, and given my age, and not that I what I don't want to say is doom and gloom because of my age and because the possibilities are gone, but it's occurred to me to start thinking about things somewhat differently than what maybe I had before. I think most of us have spent the largest part of our lives talking, thinking about, and planning because of the jobs that we have, because of it's the next bill, it's the next paycheck, and how to plan our lives around that. And that's what our lives have become. And right now we're in a place where people it seems to be our circumstances in the world are dictating the way our lives are supposed to be. And I wanted to maybe bring a different perspective to that, because most of you guys have started off life with so much promise, and I think we, as children and in our teens, thought of life maybe in a more idyllic way. And a lot of us found like maybe one thing, and maybe a couple of things, that gave us such joy. Things like music, art, maybe writing, and things that really sparked us, inspired us, and our imaginations in our lives. So what I would like to challenge you, whoever is listening and watching my bad camera work and my untrained speaking voice, to maybe start listening to your lives and start looking at your lives differently. I'd also challenge you to bring your memory and your imagination back into play in your life again. You know, our mind is a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful creation. God created us so amazing that our brains are capable of thinking in almost video, almost in pictures, and creating circumstances that are not in existence as if they do exist. And so we can actually, in our minds, conjure up images, circumstances, and scenarios as if they did exist and have not happened. And we can react as if these things actually happened. These what ifs, these possibilities, we're told, could happen. And we live our lives, many of us, in that way. I have done it for several years. I've did it a good part of my adult life. And just fear, we can live our lives in fear of the possibilities and bring our minds and emotions and the pictures that roll through our minds, which is fed by the internet, it's fed by television, the things we read, conversations we have with people. These conversations and these thoughts and these fears come at us so rapidly, it's hard to shut that off. But without, I don't mean this to sound irresponsible, but how about in this time you start shutting off some of that? That information is going to be out there and will always be out there in constant on the internet and on television and all forms of medium, all sorts of media. It's going to be there. Social media and everything. What I would like to do is challenge you guys to start thinking back when you were young. Start thinking back about the things that sparked your imagination, the things that gave you joy. If you have some time off now, go around your home and pick up, maybe all you have is a pencil and paper. Start drawing again. Start sketching again. Start using your imagination again. Start using it again. Maybe there's an old instrument around the house that's been lying around the house for decades. And at one point, there was something that gave you such joy, and stop thinking of it in a way that, stop thinking of it in your ability level. Ability level always comes in time, but I think initially, when you start any sort of creative skill or activity in your life, every one of us starts off as beginners. But the joy of it is doing it and seeing possibilities and seeing progress and just moving ahead. If you're a writer, maybe there was a story that you wanted to tell. There was I don't know whatever genre of writing that you do, a genre of fiction, a genre of fantasy, a genre of sci-fi. Maybe it's a memoir of your own life that you wanted to put into words, that you wanted maybe people to read and maybe get something from. I think this is a good time for that. This is a good time. If you're going to have any kind of downtime at all, use your life to start sparking those things again. If you're able to spark that again, you'll start seeing things in possibilities. The world is going to go on. It's going to play out like it has since the creation. Things come. Tragedy comes. It will always be here. It will always be a part of us. It will always be a part of our lives. We're going to have sadness. We're going to have fear. But maybe we can come to a place in our lives where we have a sense of wonder again, a sense of creativity, a sense of possibilities. Maybe stop living our lives tethered to have-to jobs. I know we can't afford to do that. Just do it, things 24/7. The world has sold us a bill of goods that unless you do something 24/7, there is no real value in it. And I've bought into that for so many years. And bought into the idea that my time was always money. My time was money. My time was all about, came less and less about relationships, came in less and less about things that were joyful, and it just became one series of have-tos. I think I remember first hearing that hearing that expression in the Steve Martin movie, Father of the Bride. Something about his life was just one big have-to. I've heard it said before, I've heard this played out, that music is the soundtrack of our lives. But I think for me, I said if you made a movie of my life, it would be a kind of bad, boring movie. But I would say this: the soundtrack to my life is fantastic. The music that was in my life was fantastic. I'm a musician. I've been a musician for, oh gosh, 46 years. About 46 years or so. And I'm a drummer, so some people wouldn't call me a musician, but for the sake of this video and the sake of all things, yeah, I've been a drummer for that long. I've been playing it. I've been doing it. I've been thinking about music, playing music longer than I haven't. And when I think about it, those are some of the happiest times of my life. And it's not always been happy. A lot of times what's happened is even that can become a have to after a while. And that's a bad place to be, or the thing that gives you joy no longer does. It becomes a have to. It no longer becomes a source of peace. No longer becomes a source of any kind of positive desire. That's kind of a sad place, and I've done that for a number of years, and have decided that in spite of my age, maybe there's possibility. Maybe there's something that God thinks that I can offer this world besides cash, besides money. Maybe it's just to be able to encourage you guys. Start thinking back. I challenge you guys to start thinking back in your days about the music that you first listened to. Some of you probably liked, some of you didn't like, some of you probably liked, some of it you probably loved, or some of it maybe you didn't understand, but maybe you understand a little bit better now. A lot of people are that way especially about the music that their parents listened to. I was that way about a lot of music that my parents listened to. I didn't understand what it was that they liked about it until I became older. I understood it. And quite frankly, a lot of it was, I don't think it was music for kids. I think it was, their music was maybe a bit more mature. Not always, but a lot of it was. I think the music, it probably was more mature. It came out of the 40s and 50s as my parents, where my parents lived, and they grew up, and were parents by the time the 60s came along. Just think about those times. Those early memories of what music was. Hearing it played. And what kind of atmosphere surrounded it when it was being played. I don't know if people play music around the house. I don't know. A lot of parents anymore don't listen to music for entertainment. They don't play music for entertainment. But can I challenge you Just start putting your creative mind at work. And I'm not talking about just nostalgia. I'm talking about putting your creative mind to work. Start putting it to work. Because when you start, the more you start doing that, the more possibilities you will begin to see in life. It will no longer just be a series of have-tos. I'm going to encourage you that it's no longer going to be a series of have-tos, but it's going to be, you start seeing a more series of possibilities. So that's my first video, as rough as it is. I hope I encouraged some of you today. Like I said, in spite of my untrained voice, in spite of my throat clearing, in spite of my lack of speaking training, I guess, the way to put it. And I hope that you guys have an amazing, blessed day. God bless, guys.